Hey guys, it's the Tominator, so let's take an in-depth look at the 2021 Chicago Pro. This was, I believe, the last callout from prejudging, featuring Maxx Charles, Hunter Labrada, Brett Wilkin, and Roelly Winklaar from left to right respectively. Now it's true that Roelly did drop out of the top 4 and finished in 5th, but I wanted to include him because we all know he's a fan favorite and it's been a while since we've seen him on stage. He's also the biggest name in this show, and obviously a lot of people are going to be curious and asking about him. So no disrespect to Hassan Mostafa or Mohammed Shaban, but I find you just lose too much detail when trying to squeeze 6 guys into the picture at once, and the video quality already isn't the best to begin with, so we're going to make do with this call out here. In the front double bye, let's talk about the surprise of the show first, Brett Wilkin, second from the right. I was impressed with this guy. Truth be told, I'd never even heard of him before this weekend, so certainly was not expecting to see him land as high as second. But right here in this pose, you can see why he didn't win. It's a size thing, pure and simple. He needs to add more muscle mass, especially through the arms, and as we'll see in a few minutes, the back as well. He brings those areas up and keeps this tight conditioning. He could be winning shows like this in no time. Also, though, that left arm. Not sure what's going on, if he was cramping or whatnot, but it doesn't even look flexed right now, so gotta dock him for that. But great structure and excellent separation through the quads. As for the eventual winner, Hunter Labrada, standing beside him in the middle there, Hunter looked really good, but perhaps not as good as his progress picks were leading us to believe. Then again, do progress picks ever translate to the stage? Very rarely. But anyway, I think we've seen Hunter a bit sharper than this in the past, but he wasn't far off the mark. And with his genetic pedigree, favorable muscle attachments, symmetry, and completeness, this was always going to be a hard physique to beat. Some guys are just that good that they don't need to be 100% in order to win big shows, and Hunter is one of them. He's got the best legs in this lineup. Yes, Brett's are more diced, but Hunter's are noticeably bigger. And he's one of the very few bodybuilders today who maintains proper proportions between the calves and the thighs, so that's always refreshing to see. And his arms are second only to Roelly's in this shot. No disrespect to Max, whose biceps are arguably better, but Hunter's got him beat in the triceps and forearms, and I would say the symmetry element as well. Max's right arm is larger than the left, and he's too bicep dominant. His triceps could use a lot more sweep to offset that, and the forearms need to be brought up too. There's something I've always found a little off about Max's physique, and I think it comes down to his shape and relatively poor symmetry. When you look side to side, body parts often don't match up. That said, I'm not here to pick on him. I think he looked really good at this show and made some significant gains through the legs. He definitely brought up those quads since the last time we saw him, and he looks a lot more balanced top to bottom now. Plus, he's got some of the best conditioning from the front and side. So overall, I think he might take this pose despite those flaws. He's showing the most detail through the upper body and isn't getting outsized by anybody. As for Roelly, well, what can you say? The expectations were positively through the roof, and he fell short. This is a former top 3 Olympian after all, so I think everybody, myself included, assumed it was his show to lose, and it would probably come down to him versus Labrada. But this version of Roelly was a little downsized compared to what we're used to, and he didn't nail his conditioning either. So if the plan was to come in smaller but super shredded, that didn't exactly pan out. Still, he looks great here, objectively speaking. Best arms by a mile, and arguably the best upper body too. He's got a cleaner flow than Max, and the chest and shoulders are also beating everybody else's. The legs aren't far off either, so honestly, you could make a case for Roelly winning this pose. He could use some more oil though. He looks a little too dull in my opinion. Those muscles need some more sheen on them. I'd say it's between the two on the outsides. Hunter is not winning the front double biceps. As for the front lat spread, none of them are really killing it. They all could be filling it out a little better through the lats. I love Max's chest here though, those striations through the pecs, but it looks a little lopsided with the one shoulder raised higher than the other. He brings that right shoulder down a tad. That restores his symmetry and makes the pose look that much better. As it is, I can't give it to him with a flawed execution like that. Brett looks good, but once again, not big enough upstairs. He honestly looks like he needs about another 10 pounds of muscle here. Some people were saying he should have won the whole show, but to those people, I counter, you're getting too caught up in conditioning. Conditioning is super important, obviously, but bodybuilding is primarily a muscle mass contest. Great conditioning can help bump you up a couple placings, but it rarely carries you to a win when you're getting outsized by multiple other competitors. Think about it this way, if size didn't matter and conditioning was king, then what's to stop a classic physique competitor like Bumstead or Breon from hopping into the men's open and seizing a title? Those guys are generally way more peeled than these open class monsters, but they'd look ridiculous and way out of their element standing up in this callout. It'd be like a lion wandering into a herd of rhinos. Anyway, back to the posing breakdown. I'm not crazy about Winklaar here. He looks narrow with very little taper, and that stance isn't doing him any favors. Too dainty for a massive beast like him. So that leaves Hunter, who wins this basically by default. Aside from the lats, which he still needs to bring up, and the pecs as well, everything else looks great. Structurally, he's superb with those broad shoulders and small waist, the huge quads and big arms and capped delts, and he looks so composed in it too. Like I said, nobody's really running away with this one, but if you force me to choose, then that's who I'm going with. Max would probably be second despite his less than ideal technique. In the side chest. Sweet baby Jesus, look at the hamstring drop on Roelly. That is next level beef right there. In fact, in light of this demonstration, don't be surprised to see him on the upcoming Top 10 Hamstrings video. I was on the fence about Roelly and had him in an honorable mention slot, but no way, this display proves he is worthy. Actually, I'm giving him the whole pose. Just look up top. The boulder delt, the arms go without saying, the traps even, rising up like a mountain slope. The chest could be thicker, but it's serviceable enough, and I don't think anybody is outdoing him overall. Brett Wilkin is looking strong though. Excellent posing, really opening up to showcase that chest, plus that nice deep split in the outer thigh. He looks hard and on the money. Still giving up too much size and fullness next to Roelly though. As for Hunter, I love his lower body, probably the best overall when you account for the calf and the conditioning, since he's a little sharper than Roelly. Not as sharp as Brett maybe, but considerably more muscle. But where Hunter falters for me is the pecs. They look way too thin from the side. I've noted this in past contests as well, so I don't know what he needs to do, but he's got to find a way to bring up that thickness. Maxx Charles looks formidable through the upper body, arguably the best, but his legs are undeniably the weakest of the four from the side. He's also cheating the crap out of the lion, and I noticed this was a recurring offense. At one point when he was standing over on the other side, the dude was literally about 2 feet in front of everybody else. It was ridiculous, and the judges can't be allowing that sort of blatant foul play. So yeah, I don't blame the player in this case, I blame the officials. It's their job to keep these guys in line, no pun intended, and ensure a fair comparison. Anyway, turning around, this is where you can really see the difference in muscular development and maturity of guys like Roelly and even Hunter versus a newcomer like Wilkin. Brett is the most ripped from head to toe, but his back is incredibly shallow and his arms are too small. The shoulders already look huge and fully cooked, fresh out of the oven, but not those other areas. That said, I still put him ahead of Max here, since I think this is one of Max's weakest shots. Very little taper, the waist looks uncharacteristically wide and bloated, the skin even looks thick and sort of loose, not tight like Wilkin's or Labrada's, and I think that's primarily just an age thing. But even the arms, which were pretty standout in the front version, don't look that hot right now. And once again, he's standing at least half a foot in front of Hunter. He's not that much taller than him. I think they're roughly about the same height, around 6 foot or just under. So to quote the OG Louis Marco, that is not to be saluted. Roelly looks fairly respectable, but his lower back has always been an issue for him here. The upper back, shoulders, and arms are unbeatable, however. His hamstrings and glutes are showing nice details as well, though they're not quite there yet, as you can note by the little bit of loose skin. Hunter is the clear-cut winner to me based on this look. He's really made some improvements to his back, which looks noticeably thicker than the last time we saw him. That said, he's fighting an uphill battle with those high lat insertions. Like Roelly, I think he'll always struggle in this pose against the true elites because he just doesn't have much to work with in the lower half of his back. But he's got comparable conditioning to Brett and a lot more muscle density, so yeah, I'm giving it to Labrada. The back lat spread is interesting because suddenly the two in the middle look very smooth through the back. It's like all the detail got washed out when they opened up. Contrast that with Roelly, whose back is still showing all kinds of definition. I've always considered this a strong pose for him. And even though the angle is off, you can tell he's not giving up any width to these guys either. So even though Hunter and Brett are probably a little better downstairs, Roelly has the superior upper body and takes this pose quite handily. Maxx Charles, you can see what I mean about his lack of symmetry, right? The right lat doesn't flare out as far as the left. It's minor, but overall his shape and detail is lacking here. As good as he is from the front and side, he lags behind from the back, and that's why he's not winning these shows. It's not even about the legs anymore since he's managed to bring those up to a large extent. It's the back poses that are killing him here. But in the side tricep, he bounces back. This is one of his strongest poses. With the washboard abs and the massive arms, pecs, and shoulders, he's a force to be reckoned with. I still think his lower body holds him back a bit, and that's why I'd have Hunter in the lead. Absolutely love his posing style on this one. It's like a more aesthetic version of Dorian with the trailing calf. Actually, William Bonac used to hit it like this, tilting back slightly, and it's a thing of beauty if you ask me. The chiseled, twisted midsection, the deep lines in his thighs, the beefy triceps horseshoe, this is hard to top. Now, we all know Roelly Winklaar should be having a field day with this one. Literally the best triceps in history, bar none. No disrespect to Phil or Kevin. And yet, what is he doing with it? Not much. A poor rendition of what Hunter's already mastered. Talk about wasted potential. Roelly looks tight and closed off, and the stomach is poking out. It maybe isn't the most flattering angle, but still, this ain't it, Chief. Wilkin likewise looks a little constricted through the chest and shoulders. These guys might need to work on their shoulder joint mobility. Well, maybe not in Brett's case because he was nice and open in the side chest, but here it doesn't look like it. I'd like to see him draw the shoulder back a bit, like how Hunter and Maxx are doing. I think that looks much better. Now, I get that I'm really nitpicking here, and I'm not even sure the judges care as much about this, but posing execution in the side triceps is a real differentiator because so many guys seem to mess it up these days. They're just too muscle-bound or don't practice enough. I don't know, but the result is a lackluster flow and very awkward-looking posing. In the abs and thigh, well, they keep moving around, so we'll have to freeze it at a couple points. I like Hunter, and I don't like him in this first variation. The abs are wonderful, super sliced and defined, but it's an ab and thigh pose, is it not? It's not an ab and glute pose. I don't know, but from this angle, the glutes stick out too much, and it kind of spoils his outline, so I'm not a fan of that. But nobody's displaying sharper abdominals, so that's got to count for a lot. Maxx has really benefited from bringing up those thighs. They look a lot more proportionate now. Still, he could use deeper separation there, and even in the abs, which have looked more defined in previous outings. You'll see in a moment when he hits the most muscular, they do look more dialed in than this, which is odd because the abs should be at their very best in this pose. Now, Wilkins, to my eyes, disappoints somewhat. For the most peeled and smallest guy in the callout, that midsection looks pretty faded, and the partial vacuum is barely noticeable. No point in hitting that if you can't showcase a visible ribcage outline. Roelly looks decent, but that waistline is getting thicker than it was, say, 3 years ago when he took third at the 2018 Olympia. I mentioned this before, but I truly suspect that version of Roelly might have been the high watermark for him. At his age, I believe he's 43 or 44 now, he's unlikely to get better, sad to say. Still, this is solid stuff and might be good enough for second. You could argue that, but I wouldn't put him above Hunter, who had the most shredded midsection and even flashes of feathering in the quads. Alright, and finally, in the most muscular, Maxx Charles is tough to beat. His whole body just springs to life in this shot, and he looks big as a damn house to boot. Right here in the crab, he's legitimately owning Roelly, who at his peak possessed one of the greatest, most awe-inspiring, most musculars of all time. Yet you can't deny it right now, Maxx is bigger and better. The sheer width across the chest and shoulders, the humongous biceps, the grainy vascularity, and the abs, as I mentioned before, are razor sharp. Even the legs look pretty well balanced now. This is hands down his pose. As for the others, Roelly looks crazy in terms of the amount of round muscle he's packing, but structurally he looks narrow and the waist appears kinda blocky, it has to be said. Hunter looks great in the hand-on-hip, but Brett might be one-upping him here at his own game. As we saw earlier in the back double, Wilkin has some really good delts. That's one of his genetic strengths, and it helps him here in this shot where he looks terrific. The quads even somehow look bigger than they did in other front poses, and the abs look sharper now than they did in the ab and thigh. I don't get what's up with that, since it was the same thing for Maxx, but there it is. I guess it's a little easier to crunch down on them when you don't have your arms raised over your head, but surely these guys should be practicing their posing to the point where that's not even remotely an issue. Anyway, I like Brett here in second after Charles. After that, take your pick between Hunter and Roelly. It doesn't really matter. So in summary, yes, I feel that Hunter Labrada did enough to secure the victory here. I had him winning the front lat spread, the back double, the side try, and the ab and thigh. And he was competitive in all the rest. The guy doesn't have a weak pose. So even though he wasn't the most conditioned, probably closer to 90% than a full 100, it was good enough considering his structure, size, balance, completeness, and awesome presentation. Brett Wilkin shocked us all, and his conditioning propelled him past some real heavy hitters into runner-up, but that's the absolute highest he deserved to place. I'm happy for him and feel he deserved it, but there's no argument for him winning this contest. Maybe in another year or two, once he adds some more quality muscle to his frame. Maxx looked great, and it was really impressive to witness how he brought up his legs, which looked the fullest I can ever remember seeing them. And as for Roelly, well, it's too bad. I think he looked good enough for third, or conceivably even second here if you're being generous, but remember that this was only one call-out out of many. I didn't watch the whole show, but from what I have seen, Shaban came on stronger at the finals, and Roelly probably faded, so Shaban ultimately overtook him by a single point, and it was probably the right call. This is bodybuilding after all, not reputation building, so it's about who shows up the best on any given day, not who has the biggest name or fan base. So anything can happen, and that's what makes it so unpredictable and exciting. So that's all for this one, guys. Hope you enjoyed, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more. I realize I may not be the fastest to drop videos, to put it mildly, but nobody else to my knowledge goes into this level of depth and painstaking detail, so that's the trade-off, and I hope it's worth it. Anyway, thanks for your patience and support, and as always, it's the Tominator signing off, and I'll be back.